Daniel Sparks, Senator from Mississippi District 5. Good morning, Daniel. How are you, sir?
Good morning. It's good to be with you, Paul.
That was a good piece on that one. I want you to listen to this one just first of all. I thought this was good.
You know, it's kind of funny. All these Republican candidates in the primary are trying to beat Donald Trump. And I'm still the only person to ever beat Donald Trump. And I'm looking forward to do it again for the good of this country.
Your comments on that.
I'm listening to your...
It's like throwing red meat at you.
The early part of your program, I'll just repeat.
Yeah.
Don't. Yeah, I don't.
Boy, that if a parent said that, the kid would be out the door in 5 seconds.
Absolutely.
Doing whatever he said don't do. All right, here's the deal. At 9:30? That's kind of an early start, of course. 9:30 this morning, we have a special session within a regular session. Governor's called this, and have you had a chance to look at this, or do you know anything else about this?
Yeah, we had an opportunity to meet with the folks from MDA and to meet with leadership and answer some questions. And, of course, there's a lot of non-disclosure agreements when you have a deal like this, a lot of work that's gone into it. You had Chairman Hobson yesterday, and I know he mentioned many times these things are months or years in advance. You've got multiple states that are chasing these same opportunities. So, but interestingly enough, the MDA has a site prep program that the governor has been really big on in the last few years, getting our industrial sites ready to make these offers and make these bids. And this site in Byhalia that we're going to be talking about has had a lot of attention in that way. And in November, I was actually on that site. We had an invitation from folks over at MDA with the site prep team. And they showed us. I walked out on this property. It really does help when you come back, and all of a sudden you have a project to consider. In the fact that you've been able to stand on the dirt, see the access, see the need for infrastructure, talk with the folks that are providing utilities, and we all had that in the room that day, not knowing that we would be close enough, maybe 2 months later, to be making a decision like this. So I appreciate the work they've done to prepare for it. It is my understanding that this is actually the largest payroll commitment, while the Aluminum Dynamics project may be a larger CapEx with 2,000 people at that $66,000 anticipated average wage. It's actually a bigger payroll.
Every time we have a new announcement like this, it seems like we've set the bar higher and higher, which is good news. And I think sooner or later people are going to start taking stock of this and said, what is going on in Mississippi that has this done? Chairman of Economic and Workforce Development Committee is tell me about that.
Well, what a great time to be appointed chairman of Workforce and Economic Development. And the growth that we're seeing and the investment in the state. I'm honored to serve in that capacity. The Lieutenant Governor makes these appointments, and the governor, the lieutenant governor, the speaker, our state economist, many others have mentioned our labor force participation rate as being one of the number one issues. And I think we have a great opportunity to attack that. David Parker had chaired this committee, the senator from DeSoto County, the last few years. They, under his leadership in the House, had created Accelerate, with Ryan Miller and his crew and the work that they're doing. Of course, career coaches get a lot of the attention with the high school level, and as they should, but also, the retooling, the upskilling, coordinating with our community colleges. So a lot of foundational work has been laid for us to be successful. And now we're going to have a hearing on Tuesday. Going to have the state economist over. I want him to discuss some of the things he kind of shared with the media a few days ago on the workforce participation rate. And then we're also going to have the team from Accelerate to tell us where they're at. So I think we've got to have a good understanding of where we are to try to understand where we're going. We're at 53.8%, I believe, is the workforce participation rate in Mississippi, and it's the lowest in the nation. We need more people in the workforce. These opportunities that are out there, they'll continue to come. We've got a good tax environment, regulatory environment in this state, good utilities, good schools, public safety. People want to locate here, but we have to have labor. We have to have a trained or trainable workforce to continue to see this kind of investment.
This structure that was implemented a couple of years ago, maybe last year, I think it was a couple of years ago, as far as Accelerate is concerned, where it was almost like kind of like the Saturn cars when they came out. We're not negotiating or anything. Here's what the price is, and we did basically the same thing on incentives, where anybody across the entire country or world could go and look and see what type of incentives. Did that play into this, or was that being used? I'm sure there's a lot of follow-up after the calls and the interest are a little more concrete.
Sure, and I think that some of the things in MFlex was one of the items that came in the last couple of years that while MDA on the front end, a big package like this, they're going to work directly with people because there is something about confidentiality and being professional and things of that nature. But what's great is on the back end of that, this business would know if they expanded or if they moved to headquarters or any of those things that would trigger MFlex. It's not a complicated circumstance. They actually know what their opportunities would be, and those are across the board benefits. So I do think they dovetail. You've got the team at MDA that's going to take the lead on large projects like this, and then you follow up with some things we've put in place with Accelerate, with, job training, et cetera. But then also, if they're able to grow, they know what opportunities are out there for them in the state of Mississippi.
And I've mentioned this before, and I don't want to be redundant about it, but being in Chamber of Commerce as a very early on radio career, just involved in the city, knowing the complexity of this and also knowing what the competition out there is, it always boggles my mind because, and you mentioned it, there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of locations in this country that could offer similar amenities, whether it's Texas or North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Texas, or Tennessee, all of these places. So it just doesn't fall out of the sky. You've got some competition out there that's incredible.
Yes, you do, and I don't know that in today's world it might not be really good to be analogous to the NIL portal. You have opportunities that everybody wants, and
yes.
Some people are going to overpay. And one of the things yesterday in the conversation with the MDA, we talked about some prior opportunities that MDA and the governor's office and others said that's too rich, that's too much, because whatever money is spent, this is taxpayer money. This the government doesn't create any money. They take it in a form of taxation, and so when this money is spent, we take that very seriously. Of course, a large percentage of this money is going to be infrastructure driven. This site, some rolling hills up in Marshall County, and there's a lot of site work to level. There's utilities that have got to be brought in. TVA was there that day at the presentation. Water, sewer, then our roadways. Of course, if you're going to bring in 2,000 more people per day to work somewhere, your interchanges. So a lot of the money is dealing with actually doing infrastructure that will be beneficial. It's not like this industrial park up there is without tenants already. There are numerous tenants that we hope will grow, and so the money we're spending actually makes us stronger for that site and also allows us to acquire some additional property.
I do want to ask you this when we come back. Do you, because I've heard in what you just stated, and a couple of other things that have filtered into me, that this is not a done deal yet and there may be some complications. Do you think there will be complications? Will we get this in a day and have the session start and finish in a day? Or your thoughts on that? From where you sit now as the chairman of Economics and Workforce Development in the Senate. Back with Daniel Sparks. More next. EIC. The new chair of Economic and Workforce Development Committee, it's Daniel Sparks from District 5. I hear a little rumbling that this might not be as easy as we would like it to be. And I'm sure the people on the other side, as far as the company is concerned, would like for it to slip on through. But what's your prognostication on this?
Well, there's 174 people that can ask a question. They can push their button, and they've been elected by their people. People in Senate District 5 were kind enough to allow me to come back for another term, and I always respect that. I want to make sure that, that I don't just rubber stamp things, and certainly wouldn't in this situation. But they're certainly free to ask those questions. They're free to have an opinion on it. Maybe the students of Milton Friedman may not be a fan of economic development when the state infuses any funds, but I think debate is healthy. I do think that a lot of times you can ask questions, you can have your questions answered in a professional and courteous manner, probably privately, or you can grandstand. And grandstanding doesn't benefit any of us. So if somebody has a legitimate question, we had opportunities yesterday, I think on both ends of the hall, to talk directly with the folks at MDA. In some, closed door meetings to ask whatever questions you wanted. We were told, hey, follow up if you've got something else that you think of or you have an issue. So I think there's plenty of opportunity to ask those questions. But anytime you're deliberating, spending tax dollars, I certainly think that people are free to ask those questions and those concerns. The other thing is that if you really back up and look at this, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, we have appropriated money for site preps across this state for things just like this. And I'm sure the governor will be back this year asking for more money to put toward MDA and the site prep team. Because they have prepared this. And then again, I give that team credit by inviting legislators, particularly on the northern end of the state, to this site. So it's not like we just walked in and someone's going to hand us a pamphlet of papers and say, vote for this. If you have been in tune with what the governor's trying to do, who we just reelected, and that this is an important, issue to him, then I think it's not, if anybody represents it as, hey, this thing was just thrust upon us, while this particular project may be, this type of activity, we hope continues in the state of Mississippi because people have built that foundation.
I was just thinking about this. Can you think of any project outside the ones that are not up and running yet, like the aluminum plant, et cetera? But can you think of any project that we've done, and again, outside the beef plant, but that was a different story under different leadership, that hasn't paid a plus? Well, whether it's Nissan or Blue Springs and things such as that. Well, even with the investment that we made.
Yeah, the Blue Springs project, of course, near and dear to my heart up in northeast Mississippi. A lot of people from Tishomingo, Itawamba, and Prentiss County work at that facility or some subsidiary that's there, and that has been almost for a generation now. We've really had a lot of benefits and partnership, so much that Toyota has done with our community colleges up in the corner of the state, with our universities. If you think about the Center for Manufacturing Excellence, where Ryan Miller had been for several years at Ole Miss, all of that came to be, and to a great degree, in the Governor Barber administration. And again, it was about growing industry in this state, growing an opportunity for industry. And then we go back to workforce, because I think that's the biggest issue. Any, aside from a couple that are clearly should have been vetted a little closer, I think there's been some situations where people have missed their job marks. MDA does a lot of projects that, we don't have a big press conference or legislation, but sometimes when they miss their job forecast, it may be because the labor pool wasn't there, or maybe something happened up the line in that multinational corporation.
Oh, no. I'm not saying that we haven't all. I'm just talking about these mega projects like we're talking about now have seemed to be very good. Well, here's another thing, too, because you alluded to this when it was 20 or 30 years ago, even 15 or 20 years ago. If you and I are having this conversation and we say, look, you constantly talk about brain drain and kids leaving, no place to work. Well, if it's a little bit more, or you're a little bit on the edge of this thing now, and maybe you don't even have a kid, so 20 years from now is a different story. So some of the people who may have been a little reticent back in those days have their children or grandchildren now fully employed and staying near mom and dad or grandparents. So it's one of the things to think about this particular one here. I mentioned to Lance yesterday, and I've said this before, if you want to implement or see the awards on a big billboard year after year after year, all of the awards as the county that's done the best on incentives in not offering anything, go to Essequibo County, because Essequibo County hasn't offered any incentives. And I mean, that's just an example, and it's crazy being a little sarcastic, but you've got to offer those incentives if you're going to compete one way or the other.
Yeah, you know, you do, and you also, and it's one of the things that we're really going to focus on. Of course, Donnie Bell has been reappointed Economic Workforce Development Chairman on the House side, and Donnie and I, live very close to one another up northeast Mississippi. Look forward to working with him. But it is determining where this workforce is that we're missing, who's on the couch, if that's the case. The first thing we need to do is figure out how they measure it. But you're 100% correct. We need to be focused on development west of 55 just as much as east of 55. And we've got to figure out why that's not going there. Is it a labor issue? Is it an infrastructure issue? What is it? Is it local people putting things together? Obviously up in Marshall County and others up in that region, they have had some long-term vision as it relates to this site, and it's coming together for them. You
know anything else about the what they're making as far as the batteries? These are supposedly commercial, automotive, and industrial batteries. Anything else that you know about the company?
That's my understanding, is that it is it's more of a commercial grade battery. I think there could be some variations on a theme as far as what different types of batteries that they could make.
Is this for vehicles, or do we know?
I think it could be for more than one thing. I think, of course, I certainly don't want to steal anybody's thunder, but I think that the companies that are going to be involved or the end users a lot of times of these products, I think it's going to be an impressive group of people. But it's more on the industrial side than I would say a personal car run up down the road.
Okay, everybody's offering incentives, and I think I wish we had more time on this one. But what do you think was the thing that led them to Mississippi? I mean, because you got to play off of that. What was the winning strategy when you're closing the deal? You kind of want to go back and sit down with the client and say, exactly, I want to be open and apostolic. What made you buy me?
That's right, and I think that's exactly the correct question, because we would ask that question if we did not get it. We would say, why
That's
did
exactly
we get
right.
it?
Yeah.
And so I firmly do believe the package that we can put together now with Inflex, with Accelerate, with this streamlining, also being nimble, and I appreciate, our community colleges being partners to say, okay, this is a new type of technology, or this is a new type of skill. We can retool to help train people for these jobs. I think that has a big part to do with the fact that we can do that across our state, particularly with 15 community colleges spread across the state. Excuse me. That we do that. We also have, it's a good tax environment across the board, whether it's income tax, property tax, etc. I also think it's a workforce. We have still in this state so many people who take pride in their work, the craftsmen, and I think that people see that. Years ago, when there were no jobs here, and for those that are not big on incentives, I'll take you back to the 40s and the 50s when people from Belmont, Mississippi had to drive and move their family up to Chicago to work at one of the auto manufacturers because there were no jobs down here, and they a lot of times go up there and raise a family and then move back home. So I'm thankful. We talk about brain drain now. Nobody seems to remember in the 50s how many people from particularly North Mississippi went north to find work. You mentioned Dolly Parton earlier. I think it's her birthday today. She wrote a song about it, Appalachian Memories. I mean, it was tough because you knew you had to load up and go.
Give you the final segment when we come back, and a lot of politics involved. I remember hearing stories about we could have been one of the number one places in America to take the cotton, and from the cotton to the cotton mills and manufacturers all here in the Mississippi Delta. But we didn't do that because you had basically a lot of power, and the power was in the plantation owners, and they didn't want anybody leaving the plantation to pick cotton and work in a factory and make more money. Politics is always involved. Back with movement here with the one and only Daniel Sparks, Senator from District 5, who's now the chair of Economic and Workforce and Development Committee. I would imagine as chair, you are privy to more data because you sink in trying to find out everything you can, whether it happens to be Medicaid or health or whatever it happens to be. Are you a little bit surprised or are you enthused about the amount of calls that we're getting in possible prospects?
Yes, we are, and I do. I think that the governor has said this for a long time, that, we want to be open for business. We've got momentum. We want people coming here, and he's not just said that, kind of from the governor's pulpit. He has asked the legislature to do certain things. Of course, on the Senate side, I believe, Lieutenant Governor Hoseman's push for MFLEX. We were able to get those things done, continuing to, make the tax environments better in this state. I think it's we're doing the right things, I believe, to recruit business. And certainly there are other states that, in my opinion, are doing the wrong things. And if they'll just keep doing the wrong things, it makes us more appealable.
Oh, man. And by the buttload, I'm telling you, they're doing it in the wrong way. Every single day they're doing something that makes people want to leave faster and faster. One of the other reality is culture change. We go from the agrarian society to industrialization, et cetera. It always happens, and it's happening across America, whether it's affecting local hometowns who are not real close to a more metropolitan area or rural hospitals and things like that. All of that's affected, but it's a lot better to understand that you're not going to get something like this in Tutwiler, but at least you can move your family or your sons or daughters are close from Tutwiler to Tupelo than Tutwiler to Timbuktu. So it's one of the things that people have to consider, that in some rural areas, that type of job support is just not going to be in our lifetimes, whether we like it or not.
That's correct, and we also, this is one of those things you look at it, hey, man, this is a home run or this is a grand slam. But, there was an individual that came by the Capitol this week that had moved 70 jobs to Philadelphia, Mississippi, in Jennifer Branding's district, and I spoke to them briefly afterwards, and we were excited to have them. We see that all the time. I have Yellow Creek Port is in, of course, Tenton Waterway with the Port of Itawamba, et cetera, but Yellow Creek is a state inland port. Gulfport and Yellow Creek are the only two state inland ports, and we have job growth up there that, again, may not be 2,000 jobs, but like you said, in that particular area, it may not have the participants to be able to fill those jobs. But we're seeing growth all over the state. We're seeing people locate, expand. New Way Trucks up in Booneville came here from Iowa. They've been here about 5 years now, and they've already kind of doubled what they initially were doing. So we've got a lot of opportunities across this state. Of course, you're obviously more familiar with what's in your district. But we have good work ethic with the people that work. We just need to figure out with some of the folks that are on the sidelines how to get them, out there, and that's going to be a big press for me. You mentioned data. Well, I've requested a lot of data from a lot of people to try to see where we are.
We have that asset too from Mississippi State and other universities. We've just got they have those supercomputers there. InSpark is over there.
Yes,
and things such as that, and that data is just the lifeblood of the final decision by some of these companies, and you can't get away from that. Would you be surprised if we had another special session coming up before the year end, and this is only January?
I know
the same thing.
I think that the work that's been done. Of course, you had a campaign year last year. I know this team, on the governor's side of the coin, has been working diligently. No, I wouldn't be surprised. I think that they're continuing to chase prospects. You mentioned, Mississippi State. I saw President Keenum last night. He and the folks there have already said, "Hey, we've got this data." Just like you said, that partnership across this state. Because sometimes I don't know that Mississippi's a state; it's just a big community. You know one another. You are excited to see other people successful across the state when something lands, whether it lands on the coast, whether it lands in Marshall County or Tishomingo County. And that's what's great is that, the folks over at Ole Miss at the Center for Manufacturing Excellence would partner with the folks at Mississippi State, with InSpark, with all this information, with our partners at TVA, with our federal delegation, because there's always big pieces to move when you're bringing things in like this with Brad White and the team at MDOT. I mean, it's just it's across the board that we're putting things together and working together.
What I want to see is the same thing that we saw with third grade when people from New York or California, they start looking at what the hell is going on in Mississippi. How are they doing this? And I think that's coming. Daniel, it's always good to have you in the house, sir. Appreciate it very much.
Yes, sir.
Let you go. I know you got to be there by 9:30, and it's the House and Senate convening at 9:30. Governor Reeves calls special session to address the major economic opportunity. I think we're talking about, what, $2 billion or more?
That's at least 1.9, and I